Hi everyone, welcome to a new chess video. No, not again. I hate when they play the Sicilian defense against me. I never know how to beat them. So stick around for this video, because today's your lucky day.
I've got an incredible and highly effective chess trap to completely crush this specific defense, and it works amazingly well in your games. So make sure you pay very close attention to these specific moves.
First, we'll develop our knight to f3, which is the most standard move after the Sicilian defense c5. The most common response from your opponent is to play d6. As you know, this is the most natural continuation for playing the Najdorf Sicilian, the Dragon Sicilian, the Classical Sicilian, lots of Sicilian variations. But here, they're expecting us to play d4 to continue into the open Sicilian. And we're going to play bishop to c4. It seems like a pretty beginner level line. In fact, your opponent might think, this person is playing the Italian opening against a Sicilian defense. What's going on here? Well, check this out. Let's see what the most common move is in this position. In this case, it's knight to f6. How are we going to punish all of that? So, what are we going to do? We're going to push this pawn here to mess up our opponent's pawn structure. This pawn on d6 is pretty strong, so now we're attacking the knight. Basically, they're forced to capture this pawn on d4. We'll recapture with the knight, and check out what a powerful attack we have here. Before we continue with this line, which is absolutely spectacular, I'd really appreciate it if you gave this video a big like, since I'm bringing you some truly amazing traps for free every day. So if you want to support this channel for free, give it a big like or even leave a comment. Everything helps. Or subscribe. It all helps. Alright, now let's continue with this trap. So what are we threatening now with the knight and the bishop? Well, many of you have probably noticed that we're threatening this spectacular checkmate right here. Honestly, I'm telling you, sometimes they don't even see this checkmate, and a lot of people play, for example, this move here, and we just deliver mate. But that hardly ever happens, because most of the time your opponent is gonna see this checkmate. The other day, someone played this move against me, attacking both pieces at once, but of course it's just checkmate. Alright, let's see what happens if they defend against the checkmate, which is the most common thing to happen. e6, the most natural move to defend the bishop's diagonal. So let's see here how we should continue, because this is the most natural move, and the one you're going to see most often when you play this move. We're going to play queen to e2. What's the idea behind queen to e2? Well, it's to bring another piece into the attack. And let's analyze the situation a bit. We have a bishop that's still aiming, a knight that's also aiming, and a queen that's aiming as well. So many of you have probably already thought about some kind of sacrifice here. Notice, for those of you who are more advanced, we see that there are two pieces attacking the square. So, our pieces are well positioned to attack our opponent. Plus, we can castle on the next move, and our opponent still can't. Even in most of the traps we see here, we usually end up a pawn down, but in this case, we're even in material. So what happens if our opponent doesn't do what we want him to? Well, we're still in a good position either way. Let's see here. Our opponent wants to play knight to c6, but they can't. Why not? Because after the exchanges, look, this weakness that's left here, two doubled pawns, and on top of that, no support from the sides, is a chronic weakness that we can take advantage of throughout the whole game. So our opponent doesn't want to develop their knight via c6, and the most natural thing is for them to develop it via d7. So how do we punish this, chess teacher? Well, as many of you are probably thinking, black's pieces are already completely lost here. It's only been about 5 moves or so, and our opponent is already totally lost, because we're going to sacrifice the knight on f7. A lot of you love the missile trap. Notice how this one looks a lot like it, but in the Sicilian defense. And let's see how this continues. Now we're attacking both the queen and the rook, as usual. So, as you know, they're forced to capture the knight. Otherwise, they'd lose material. And now what? How do we continue? Well, we bring in the queen. Queen takes on e6, check with a queen and bishop battery. And now they're pretty much lost here. The king can't go back. He has to move forward. Let's see how to checkmate this king here. I'm sure many of you already know how to checkmate here, but if not, I'll explain it to you. Look, first of all, let's push this h4 pawn forward. Why? To push it a bit further and keep the king under control. Also, we could push this pawn forward to control this diagonal with the bishop, which would be really useful for us. So, how can the black pieces continue here? Well, obviously, there's a checkmate threat in two moves, so they have to try to stop it. So, how are we going to continue? First, we give a check with the bishop, and notice that now this king pretty much has no way out. The only move that can save them for now is this one, and we simply bring the queen down here. Checkmate. They can take with the pawn, but we capture it, and now, yes, an impressive checkmate. So we're going to play the Italian opening, even if they play the Sicilian, bishop to c4. The most common move here, as we've seen, is knight to f6. And let's see if you remember what move we had to make here. Exactly, e5, threatening this knight, and if it moves, we gain a tempo. So they're pretty much forced to capture. After the exchanges, we're putting pressure here, threatening this checkmate with the bishop and also bringing in the knight. So a lot of people are going to defend it, and most will defend it with e6. And let's see what we're going to play here, queen to e2. What did we analyze in the previous variation? We analyzed that if they came here with the knight, we would simply trade it off and end up better, since black would be left with this really bad pawn structure. And we saw that if they played knight to b7, which seemed like the most natural move, they would also end up losing because of this knight sacrifice. So here, many of you might think, well, I'm not going to do that. I'll just play bishop to e7 so I can castle on the next move, and it looks like there's no problem here. That's right, we simply castle. And what are we waiting for? We're waiting for our opponent to castle. Once they've castled, we're going to play a really strong move with our pieces, which is rook to e1. Why is rook to e1 such a good move right now? We're lining up our powerful rook and our strong queen directly along the semi-open file. You already know that a semi-open file is a file where we don't have a pawn, but our opponent does. So it's a good file to place our rooks on. And we're also putting more pressure on this e6 square, which was our goal from the start. And you might say, well, now let's see what the black pieces do. There's something you need to know. Always remember the plan, the position, not the exact moves. For example, if they play a 6, they're threatening to trap your bishop here. So whenever they play a 6, you need to remember to play a 4, okay? That's something you really need to remember. If they play a 6, you automatically play a 4 without even thinking. Why? Because now they can't play it, since after the exchanges they lose the rook. So here we play a 4. Alright, now let's see how the game continues. If they don't play a 6, then you simply don't play a 4, and that's it. That's why I always tell you it's so important to really remember our plan, and not just the exact moves, because if you only remember the exact moves and you mess up one move, then you're already in trouble. Let's see, here they might try to develop the queen side. How can they do that? Well, knight to c6 has the same problem as before. We simply exchange here, and our goal is to attack these two pawns, and we have a huge advantage because they're very hard to defend. So knight to c6 doesn't seem like the best move. Now yes, chess teacher, now they can play knight to b7. Why? Because the king is no longer in the center, and now these sacrifices don't look good anymore, of course. Now, if I capture here, I don't have to take with the king, I can take with the rook. So here, how should we continue? Well, that's right, I'm going a little crazy. Knight takes on f7, even though they have the rook. Yes, I'm going a little crazy. You already know that, right, guys? You already know it, but this works. That's why I'm explaining it to you. What happens now if they capture with the king? Obviously, we bring in the queen and end up in a much better position. But of course, they can capture with the rook. And if they take with the rook, it seems like nothing's really happening here. So watch out, guys, because we come in with the queen takes on e6, pinning the rook, and on top of that, we're setting up a queen and bishop battery, putting on super strong pressure that they have to deal with in just one move. They have to defend this rook no matter what, and they'll have to do it with the queen. It doesn't matter if they defend it here or here, because our goal's the same. What are we going to do now? Take advantage of our rook and capture this bishop. Because, of course, this black rook simply can't move at all, since our powerful bishop is perfectly pinning that rook to the king. Simply, if they capture our queen, we just recapture with the rook. And notice that here we've not only won the position and a couple of pawns, but now we're also going to win the exchange. This rook can't be defended. If they try to defend it, for example with the knight, we just take it. So on the next move, we're not just going to win the exchange. Actually, we're going to win the whole rook, and with it, the game. This is what's interesting about playing bishop to c4, because this diagonal is incredibly strong. So let's see what happens if they play something completely different. At first, we'll play knight to f3, we already know that, then d6, and instead of playing d4, we'll play bishop to c4. That's our plan. Of course, we saw that knight to f6 made things really good for us to play e5. But of course, a lot of you tell me in the comments, chess teacher, sometimes they don't play what you say they will. Alright, let's look at attack plans and how to go about it if they don't play the way I told you. They might play e6 to block this bishop's diagonal. In fact, it's a very common move when, in the Sicilian, they play, or we play, bishop to c4, aiming at this diagonal, to play e6 to cut it off. Here, we're simply going to play the flexible move queen to e2 to try to reach the same position as before. So if they play knight to f6, which is the most normal thing in the world, we can push the pawn, and after the exchanges, we're in the same position. Yes, here we've reached the same position, but hey, relax, 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 because we're going to play some different things so you all can see how to end up winning the game. For example, before we continue with this, imagine that here black, instead of playing knight to f6, tries to play something like d5, which seems normal. Here they couldn't because thanks to the queen, after the exchanges, they can't recapture. Therefore, this pawn on d5 wouldn't be possible. That's why the natural move is knight to f6. And here, now, yes, after the exchanges, let's see how to continue if they don't go for the plan you mentioned. Let's see, chess teacher, we've seen knight to c6, we capture and double the pawns, knight to d7. We keep going with our plan, just like we saw before, right? Knight to d7 was a mistake because we could jump in with our bishop to e7, we would castle, and calmly place our rook on the semi-open file. Now, let's look at a sample game so you can see that what really works is the plan, not just the moves we've memorized. Imagine here, the black pieces make a very logical move, which could be moving this bishop, but not to e7, instead to d6 to enable castling and to attack the knight. Also, this bishop is on a very active diagonal, so if we castle, it'll be aiming straight at the h2 square and could cause us serious trouble. So bishop to d6 is the good move. Let's see how to continue with our plan. We're going to castle calmly. As you can see, this is our plan. And now, how are we going to continue here? How should we proceed? Our opponent castles as well, which is a very normal move. As you can see now, there are no sacrifices here or anything like that, because this bishop is still defending this square. Those sacrifices only exist when the knight is on d7, because it blocks the bishop's diagonal. And here, let's see how to continue. So here we're going to play the move f4, a move that's very, very interesting. Check out this plan. It reinforces this really strong knight. Now, they couldn't capture because we'd be threatening this knight, and the game would be completely lost for black. Plus, we're threatening to swing the rook over to this side. The move f4 is very interesting, as long as they can't directly attack our king along this diagonal. Here's a question for you, chat. Alright, chat, we're not live, but for everyone watching, subscribers and non-subscribers, what should we do if they play the move a6? It's really interesting because they're putting a lot of pressure on us. It seems like a subtle move, but they're attacking. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to the video, we have to play a 4. Why? To prevent them from playing b5. So, let's continue with the game. Now, black has to decide where to move this knight. If it goes here, obviously we're going to come out and, well, we'll just keep going as usual, right? We capture over here. So a more precise move might be to first defend with queen to c7, setting up a nice battery here with the queen and bishop, and also defending this square right here. So I'm showing you how to handle it if they don't play the way chess teacher told us, right? Now they're playing in a completely different way. They played a 6, okay, so we play a 4. If they don't play it, we don't play it either, and that's it. Queen to c7. A totally different move. So now our plan is going to be to activate this bishop along this diagonal. Look at what a great diagonal this is. It's going to come attack this knight here. They play knight to c6, and here's a serious question. What do we do with this knight? Do we trade it or not? Well, this knight has to be traded no matter what. Why? Always remember, whenever their knight lands on c6, we have to trade it. With the queen here, with the queen there, it doesn't matter, we trade it. Look at this threat. Beyond the pawn threat, there's a bigger issue. Our queen's attacked, they're hitting us here, and the knight could jump in. So, what do? We must take this knight immediately. And now black has to decide how to recapture. Obviously, they've placed the queen there so they don't have to double these pawns. They capture with the queen, and let's see how we continue. Well, with our plan to place this bishop along the diagonal, here we're threatening to double up on this knight. For example, if they play this move, which ignores the threat, what could we do? Many of you might say, we could capture this knight. Yes, we could capture it and open things up, but there are still better moves. And let's see, for example, I'm gonna explain this to you. Why? Because a lot of people are gonna try to defend this knight, sorry, I can't talk, this knight, so that the king side doesn't get opened up, right? So that we don't open up their king side ourselves. And I'm going to show you how you should do it. So first, imagine where we need to move this knight. Should we move it here? No, because we blocked the diagonal, right? We're gonna move it over here. It might seem like a weird move, but it's actually really interesting, right? We can do something like this, and suddenly this knight becomes good. Alright, so now let's analyze. Imagine they play this move here. It doesn't matter. Like I was saying, it doesn't matter if they play it now or if they played it earlier. Just don't let them trade this knight here. Let's see how to deal with it. First, before that, let's see what happens if they threaten us with a possible checkmate over here. For now, you don't need to worry. We have the queen defending, thanks to the move f4. As you can see, this f4 move is saving us from a lot of trouble. Alright, let's move a bit faster to see the plan, otherwise this'll take forever. We bring our other rook into the attack. You know, it's a classic plan. Why this rook and not the other ones? Because this rook is doing a great job defending this square here, which could otherwise be captured. Alright, now after all these attacks, let's see what happens if our opponent plays knight to d5. It's a move they could have played earlier, and they could play it now, as we mentioned, to avoid this bishop takes f6 exchange and having to recapture with g takes f6. Well, if they play this knight here, let's see how to continue, because we have a huge advantage. And many of you might say, just teacher, I don't really see that much of an advantage either. We're even. I don't know how to attack. Well, we've managed to take away all the pieces defending our opponent's kingside. And now this bishop has opened up towards the g7 square. So by bringing in the queen, notice that we're completely winning. We're putting pressure from every side. Retreating with the knight wouldn't be possible because then it would be left undefended. So at this point in the game, here they'd have to attempt to play a move such as g6, and now we are absolutely completely winning. You can simply push this pawn forward. They can't capture with this one because it's pinned, so they have to take with the other. And now we bring in the rook. Notice that they can't capture here either. We're threatening everything, we're also threatening the knight over here. We're threatening a possible checkmate soon. First of all, they have to move this knight away. Plus, it threatens the rook. A rook that simply comes over here, taking advantage of the pin by the bishop and the queen. So at this point, we're completely winning. Imagine they play this move here to threaten you with this. I'm going to leave you with some homework. Let me know down in the comments how we can win here. We're already completely winning, but I'm sure many of you have already seen exactly how to win. So I want you to tell me in the comments how we can win this position right here. I'll be reading through all of your comments as I always do. I haven't had time to reply to your comments on the videos from yesterday and the day before. I think it was those two. But little by little, I'll get to everyone because I have a lot of work. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'm looking forward to seeing your answers in the comments to see if any subscriber has managed to solve this problem here, which I know you all love. Give the video a big like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the daily videos and can learn a ton of chess for free. And I'll see you in the next video, friends. Goodbye.